Okay, hey everybody. It's our weekly SaaS founder show. It's me, Andy Halko, CEO of Incivia. Tony isn't with us today, but we've got a great guest, and I'm extremely excited to talk to her about her journey. We have Sam Ettus from Place Payments. Sam, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Tony, we miss you. We're thinking of you.
Of course. So, the best place to start out is, can you tell us a little bit about what Place Payments does?
That's a tongue twister. So I started Park Place because I recognize that most merchants, most business owners, whether you're a doctor's office or a yoga studio or a restaurant, really disliked their merchant services provider. Most people cannot stand their payment processor, and I thought, what's going on here? And so when I dug into the industry, there were a bunch of things they didn't like. They didn't like the experience of dealing with a salesperson that reminded them of like the worst used car salesperson. They
Mhm.
didn't like the fact that they felt like they were being overcharged, which usually they are, and underserviced. And so I realized it wouldn't take that much to disrupt the industry. And the way we went about doing it, and we started 3 years ago, was to really take an entirely new kind of sales force. So all of our account executives, which is what we call them, the whole industry calls them,
Mhm.
reps or agents. We try to do everything a little bit above board, a little differently. So our account executives are all from outside of the financial services industry. So they have no
Okay.
bad habits. We train them from the beginning online, and then they sell in their local communities to the businesses they already know, because these people are already part of the fabric of their communities. So their dentist already trusts them, and their hair salon already trusts them. And so that is who our sales force is. They sell locally, they're part of the fabric of the community, they attend chamber of commerce meetings. And the big thing that we're building right now, which we're super excited about, is this account executive platform, which is essentially kind of like going to work every day at your laptop. So
Hmm.
the one thing that we've been missing is creating a community among these amazing account executives. And once we create it, they'll be able to log in every day and see how much money they made overnight, and see, the latest sales training video, the latest product, what industry news is happening, everything. It's almost like they'd
Yeah.
rather log in there than Slack or Facebook. So we're super, super excited about kind of our next phase of growth. And then the other thing that we're building right now is our merchant portal. So one of the things that we saw that was lacking in the industry is that most of the merchants have to deal with really poor reporting systems. They're arcane. And part of the reason they are is because the way the industry works, there's so many hidden fees that people don't want the merchants to have a really transparent view into what they're charging. And so they're
Mhm.
intentionally designed to confuse merchants. And so we're taking away all that and creating the Park Place Merchant Portal, which is going to be just super user friendly and all about the merchants. And we feel like we would always rather be transparent and have this great relationship with the merchant for 5, 10 years, the life of the business, rather than kind of the churn and burn mentality that's really prevalent throughout payment processing.
Wow. I definitely want to get back to a lot of those topics, but I'd love to go back to when you started. And I was reading online that there was a little bit of an epiphany at a conference, and just kind of how you were out in the world. Can you talk about, where this first came into your mind, and how it like coalesced?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of public speaking. I'd been at a conference about 12 years ago now that was kind of like a boondoggle for the payments
Mm.
industry. And it was the top 20 ISOs, top 20 sales organizations in the industry. Everyone had arrived on private planes. They were all white men. All of them were kind of laughing about overcharging the merchants. And I remember saying to them, and they didn't seem like people who just really cared about small business owners or cared about Main Street, or, cared about their customers. And I remember saying to them, where are the women in this industry? Where are the people
Mm.
of color? And they kind of laughed at me. And I was a competitive athlete growing up, and I was like, okay, one day I'm going to come back and crush these guys. And I just didn't know it would be so soon, honestly, because I
Right.
thought, I'll do that in my 60s or 70s because there's no rush. And then when I'd been on a book tour for my last book, which was my fifth book, and I was speaking at, tons of companies and conferences, and the one group of people I couldn't help were either the people who'd left the workforce and wanted to get back in but found very few opportunities, and then also this other segment of people that felt like they were financially capped in their careers, like there's only so much they could make in their current careers. And I thought, what if I could train these groups of people to sell payment processing, instead of kind of the other side hustles that were out there, which at the time and actually still are, selling vitamins or makeup or skincare, all these things that really, when you dig into it, are actually, people are losing money on them for the most part. They're not even breaking even, because most of those companies make you buy inventory. And so you're the one holding, there's always someone left holding the bag at the end. And I thought, what if we could train people for free to sell payment processing to their local businesses, whether they want to work 2 hours a week, or whether they're like me and they're hustling and they want to work 50 hours a week. The sky's the limit in terms of their earning potential. And that's what we did. And we developed a program where they can get financial independence as quickly or as slowly as they want, based on their own goals and how much time they put into it.
So we talked to a lot of founders. What was it like making the decision that you wanted to start the business? And I always like to get into kind of the mental, emotional, like, were you worried about the future? Was it, a struggle, or did you feel really confident and just dove in and made it happen?
I've always been a very confident person, and I don't, the no's I don't really take very personally, which I think is
Good.
critical when you're an entrepreneur, because I hear no multiple times a day, and I just kind of think of no as a slower path to yes. Or I also, I have spreadsheets, and I think of like every no you get gets you closer to that yes. So I've always been someone who, isn't afraid of taking the leap. But I will say that when you're an entrepreneur, it's kind of like being on the roller coaster every single day.
Right.
And, no matter what's going on, there's something unexpected coming your way, and you're going faster and flying faster, or, at a pace that you do not control. And so I think that probably until you, exit your business as an entrepreneur, you feel that way. Now, I'm a venture-backed entrepreneur, right? So I am building the billion-dollar business. I am not building a cruise ship. I'm building a rocket ship. So I have a feeling, if I was happy just with like a small little company and happy with the growth that we currently have, and just continuing on that path, it would be very different. But I've always been someone who has giant goals and intends to achieve them. And I think that, there's a lot of business owners that don't have that feeling of, oh my gosh, what's today holding and how can I get there faster? If you own the store on the corner and you just want to have solid and steady revenue growth, that's a very different business than creating a business that relies on, technology and all sorts of other things to grow.
I think, that roller coaster analogy is so true. And every founder we talk to, talks about it. But I always think it's good to continue to bring up, because, sometimes we're in it and we feel like we're alone on the roller coaster. But the reality is there are a lot of other entrepreneurs that are riding it with us. And so, I always think it's good just to repeat, like, look, we're all in a similar, mental space with this.
Well, and actually, Andy, I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that being an entrepreneur is exceptionally lonely, right? I mean, it's lonely socially because, let's say you're at a barbecue on the weekend or whatever, you don't feel like people there fully understand what you're dealing with when they're going to a 9 to 5 job, or, dealing with their own lives. You don't feel like they could possibly relate. So when they say, how are things going? You just say they're great and you move on.
Totally.
But I also think it's really important that entrepreneurs build a community of other entrepreneurs. And if you don't have one today, it is never too late to create one. There are entrepreneurs on LinkedIn, inside your industry, outside your industry. There's, organizations that are designed to bring entrepreneurs together. But I think it's really important to have those people in your corner that you develop relationships with, so that whether it's you need a new accountant, or you want to know what you would do with this employee situation, or you want to grow your customer base, talking to other entrepreneurs inside and outside the industry is one of the best things you can do to grow your own business and keep your sanity at the same time.
Right. Are there any specific groups that you're part of or that you recommend that you've come across over the years?
I am involved with a women's group called The List,
Okay.
which is an incredible group of 400 women in tech and media.
Mm.
That's very, very supportive, that I rely on for sure. And then, I have a lot of close friends who are in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I haven't joined. Are you in that?
I am.
Okay, great. Okay. So I haven't, it's funny because my best friend in New York is in it, and she's always trying to get me to join. And I just feel like right now, given where I am, I don't have the bandwidth actually to even attend EO meetings. So I would not
Mhm.
be a good member, but I've spoken at EO events in the past, and, I think very highly of it.
Yeah, it's a great group. Yeah, there's a number of those out there. The other one I'd like to ask you about, and this has been a very common theme for everybody that we've interviewed, but mentors. Is that something that you've had in kind of your journey? Is folks that have served as mentors, or have you done that for others?
Well, I am someone who likes to keep in touch. Okay. So if I collect people, right? So Andy, you're never letting go of me. Now we're friends.
That's right.
We'll be in touch in 20 years. So I
I
mean,
know
I
we're already
really do.
connected on LinkedIn.
Exactly. I already connected with you on LinkedIn. I do keep in touch with all of my old bosses,
Mm,
and I, even though most of them are corporate, I still, when I go into their cities, when I'm traveling, I make sure to have dinner, coffee with them. I mean, I really do rely on a council of people that I can go to for different things. In terms of mentors, it's really funny. There's a lot of research in the last 10 years about mentors, and it's more important to have sponsors than
mm,
mentors. And what that means is a sponsor is someone who's truly looking out if there is a position you'd be right for, or a business development opportunity for your company. They're people who will open up their, I used to say Rolodexes, that makes
yeah.
me ancient, but they're opening up their networks to you, and they're really trying to look and seek out opportunities for you. It's not just, oh, young son, come to me for advice for 45 minutes and you were lucky to get my time. I think what's even more valuable is having people that really look out for each other and say, I can't do this speaking engagement, but she or he would be awesome for it. And I think that that's really important. And it's funny. So I would say in the last, couple years, I have changed my tune on that. And I think of it often as my peers. So, I don't ever have all the answers. And I think as I get older and more experienced in my career, I have fewer answers, not more, right? I just have more questions than I
Yep.
ever had. And actually, with age and with experience comes confidence, and you get more comfortable saying, I don't know, or that's not
Mhm.
my wheelhouse. I'm really good at this, but I'm not strong in this. Please show me the way. So I am always, if there's a knowledge gap, I am trying to fill it with other people, and it's not always the same person twice. Now, are there young people that or not even necessarily much younger than me, but people that I will, spend time helping? Absolutely. But I would say that my value is more in saying, okay, think about this opportunity. I'm happy to recommend you here. I will introduce you to this person.
No, that's great advice. I think, it's interesting your comment about being willing to admit what you don't know. It's kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Johari window, but this idea of, you don't know what you don't know. And as you grow, I think you learn like there is more that I just don't know. And having that willingness to say, I have a gap in knowledge, I need someone to help me is definitely one of those maturity pieces. And I think especially for founders and entrepreneurs to be able to get to that place where they can say like, I need other people, right?
And by the way, I mean, what's harder than having people on your team who aren't open to that, right? So it's one of the things I look for when I hire is someone who, if they, make a mistake, which we all do every day, or they don't know something, they're not pretending to know it, or not just saying, oh God, I screwed up. Let's, how can I do it better next time? I think that mentality is so important for everyone in a startup environment to have.
So something that you mentioned a little bit ago, venture backed. So, do you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I think a lot of the folks that we talk to and who watch this think about, okay, do I want to start a business where I'm, on a train and it's smaller and we're moving at a steady pace, or do I want to try and make it a rocket ship? And should I get others involved and build capital? Can you talk about your experience there?
Yeah, and it's ever evolving. I mean, if you have me on the show in a year, I'll have a totally different perspective. I have raised 2 rounds of capital. I'm right
Mm.
now launching my third fundraise.
Wow.
So far we've raised $2.5 million. Our new raise is bigger, a lot bigger than that. I would say that I am someone who likes the team behind me. Right, I was a Division I college athlete. I love being part of a team. Um, but I think of investors as strategic. So they're not just about money. There are people out there that are just like you. They're invested now in your success, and they
Hmm.
care about evangelizing your business, whether that's looking for business development opportunities for your business, whether it's, talking about your business. When they hear, in my case, when they hear someone needs a payment processor, they think of us. Or when they think of, a giant sales force, they think of my team to sell whatever the product is. Those are people that I really care about having on my investor, on my cap table. That's really important to me. So when I look for investors, I don't just look for the money, I look for smart money. And I would say that that's critically important for entrepreneurs. When you're starting out, and if you think you need to raise money, it's very tempting to take any money.
Right.
And I have done that. I've made that mistake, and it's very important to take smart money.
Yeah.
And when you have a smart investor, I would rather take less money from a smart investor than sort of, what they call dumb money, because you're really tied to those investors for the life of your business or until they sell their shares. And it's really important that you like who your investors are. So in our case, we're very deliberate about who invests and about making sure that it's a two-way street, that we're as comfortable with them as they are with us. And I think that as entrepreneurs, it's kind of like you always feel like you're not in a power position to make those decisions, and you just take any terms or anything that comes your way. And so I think the more deliberate you are, the better you are in terms of, building your company in a smart way.
Yeah. Well, how and when did you decide to go that route? Because I think in conversations that I have with people that are in the startup spaces, when do I want to start raising capital? Should I have, uh, you know, consistent revenue and built a certain level, or should I do it earlier? And that's always a question. And I'm sure there's never one right answer, but how did you come to that decision on, when to do it?
I mean, listen, there's some days I wake up and I'm like, I wish I had just been able to bootstrap this and not take
Right.
any outside money, because I feel the weight of the world sometimes on me, because I have so many people counting on me to make this a success, not just my employees and me and my family, but also the investors. So every time you take more money, it's, more weight on your shoulders. But at the same time, I had really big goals. I was looking at these multi-level marketing companies that were preying on people. And I thought, okay, why shouldn't I be as big as they are?
Hmm.
I'm doing this the right way, and I'm having people earn an honest living through and recurring revenue. So I should aim to be that big. And it's funny because payment processing is kind of a cash cow business. And
Hmm.
most payment processors do not take outside money because you start earning money right away as soon as you sell your first merchant. Um, I knew that I didn't want to build a traditional payment processor, right? That would be super easy to do. That's what a ton of people have done. There's thousands of them around the country. I knew I wanted to build something completely different. And I also knew that the pace at which I wanted to build that and the scale at which I wanted to build that would be impossible to achieve without outside money. So I had a ton of people advising me not to take money. This is the last business. It's not a capital intensive business, but of course I've designed it in a way that is capital intensive, because our differentiator right now is our customer service. We always say most of the time we're the best price option, and all of the time we are the best customer service. So, that's why people come to us. But at
Hmm.
the same time, I knew that to build the company I want to be building, we have to invest in the technology platforms that we're designing right now and that we're building right now. So, because of that, outside capital is necessary.
Yeah, I know if you ask 8 people their advice on when and how to raise capital, you'll get 8 different answers. It's just the way that it is.
Well, and I will say, I know that the venture capital community has tried very hard, or saying actually has said that they're intent on getting diverse founders from all over the country, not just the coast, and people in all different industries. But at the end of the day, it is a very clubby atmosphere, and there's a language that they expect. The decks have to be a certain way. There's a process that if you are outside of that process, you will get penalized.
Yeah.
And I'm stepping on landmines every day because I am someone who's super open. If I like you, I tell you, oh, I think we'd be great together. That is not
That's
what you're
right.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not very good at playing it cool. And I'm learning, the way to do that
Yeah, we've
slowly.
heard that over and over about raising capital, of it being a little bit clubby. And I think that leads us into a great part, because one of the other things that I read on the site was really this focus on the, woman owned, female led. Can you talk? Obviously a white male, but can you talk about that idea, and why you wanted to have that as a central theme of the business, and how that maybe even impacted this venture capital piece?
Yeah, I mean, there are so few women selling financial services that I wanted to change that.
Hmm.
And now I would say that our account executive base, we now have over 1,000 account executives in all 50 states. 80% are women. We have a lot of men. I would say 40% are people of color. Everyone, almost everyone, is a victim of some sort of ism, whether it's
Mm.
ageism, like we have white guys who are in their 60s who are kind of kicked out of the workforce, even though they're just as valuable as they were 20 years ago. So anyone who's been a victim of ageism, of sexism, ageism, homophobia, bring it on, come to Park Place.
Yeah.
We want you. But at the same time, and we basically will train anyone. We don't have it's up to you whether you want to be successful. So
Right.
naturally people get weeded out. They go through a training program and they'll fall like weeds on the side because it's, too tough for them, or they're not as
Mm.
interested as they thought they'd be, or they get launched and then they just never get off the dime. And then we figure out I always say, I say to my team, you're mining for gold. Who are those people that are really going to invest their time and hustle in this and be successful? Now, so because of that, I intentionally designed a very diverse account executive team. And
Mm.
our full-time team is also diverse. I mean, we have a couple of white guys who work on the team, but we also have a lot of women on the team and a lot of people of color and just people from all different backgrounds. And that's been really important to me as I grow. I think that most founders, whether you are a white dude founder or whether
Mhm.
you're like me or whether you're a person of color, you have to be intentional about creating a diverse team, because if you want to appeal to a diverse group of customers,
Mhm.
your team has to look like them. And there's so much data on how diverse teams perform better, and it's good for you financially. This is not a charity thing,
Yeah.
so that's always been important to me. And then raising capital from diverse capital sources has been very important to me. It's a
Mm.
lot easier for me to raise money from all white men. I'm
Mhm.
proud to say that half of our cap table is women and people of color,
Mm.
which is very rare. But I do think that if you're expecting diversity in terms of investments, you also have to demand it from the entrepreneur side. So I think that entrepreneurs need to be intentional about who they raise money from. And then the third piece of that is that, there's all these gloom and doom statistics that, last year was the worst year in years for
Mm.
women raising money, that only
Mm.
2% of venture capital money went to women. I am so sick of hearing that statistic. I know I'm part of that 2%, but I also think that it really sort of pushes people to stay away from raising money.
Mm.
And when you constantly perpetuate those statistics and talk about them all the time, they end up really being a deterrent for people. At the end of the day, if you are committed to raising money and VC money, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. But there is now so much money and there are so many VC firms that if you are intent on being successful there and you have a really solid, great business, you probably will be successful. And that's how I think of it.
That's great. So, do you mind sharing maybe some advice for maybe a woman that's in an organization or wherever they are in life and they've got an idea for something, they've got that inner drive and they're, staring in the face of, I guess, that decision. What would you kind of encourage?
Well, in general, I would say this to all potential entrepreneurs. I think that, I used to be partners with Gary Vaynerchuk in a business
Mm,
years ago, and I really appreciate a lot of his message, but I do think that he also has launched this thing where everyone should be an entrepreneur. And at the end of the day, you have to be such a hustler to be an entrepreneur.
mhm.
So you have to really look inside and say, am I someone who can take risks? Can my family afford right now for me to take a risk? Financially, am I in a position to do that? Or should I wait 8 years when my last kid is in college, or,
Right.
like figure out, is this the time in your life to be taking on a financial risk? Have you done a lot professionally that will help you in this business? Do you have good contacts? Are you someone that's comfortable networking? Are you someone who doesn't get defeated by a lot of no's? Are you someone who believes in yourself and has an inner confidence? Those things are all really important to figure out before you decide to take the leap. And then the other thing is really do your homework on the industry. Is there a need for what you are building? Do you know how you would go about acquiring customers? What kind of capital will you need? You can do all of that research while you're in another position. So I always recommend really thinking thoroughly and researching heavily before you take that leap. Don't just wake up one day and say, I hate my boss. I just want to go. And,
Right.
I think it's easy to get in that mindset because there's so many gurus out there saying, go for it. You've got this. And I'm the first cheerleader, in your corner, but I think you should be smart about that decision.
Yeah. I'm curious to ask. This came up, I think, a show or two ago, but nature versus nurture for entrepreneurs. What do you think? Is there an impact to that in success? Obviously, I think every entrepreneur has a sense of constantly growing and learning, which obviously is that nurture. But there are definitely folks that think that there's personality traits and some inherent things that just make you more likely. So what
Yeah,
do you think?
Andy, it's so funny because I'm obsessed with like studying people and
Hmm.
and figuring people out, and I'm pretty good at that. I have a high EQ. However, I still to this day would not say there is a cookie cutter person who is a successful entrepreneur
Mm,
or a successful salesperson or successful anything. I think it comes from your inner drive, and that's something you can't necessarily see. I think that if you are someone who just is always wanted to be the best, whatever you're doing, right? Like if you go to Japan, you will notice that the person who is sweeping at Starbucks in Japan takes their job so seriously.
mm,
They want to be the best. They want to come to work every day and do
yeah.
whatever they're doing it the best they can do, right? If you are that kind of person who's always trying to do your best, whatever position you're in, you are more likely to succeed as an entrepreneur because entrepreneurship entails you doing everything from sweeping the floor to, crunching the numbers.
100%.
Everything is going to at some point be in your lap, in your wheelhouse, and you're going to have to be responsible for all of it. And so having that inner hustle that even on the tough days or even when you hit the speed bumps gets you continuously going, that's probably what is needed to be successful.
You mentioned competitive nature too, and a background with sports. I always wonder how that plays into this personality thing because you see that a lot. Is someone that's come from a competitive. They said, "Look, I was in competitive sports. I like to win." How much is that a play for you in this idea of being an entrepreneur?
A huge, I think for me, like I love I love the fact that I was an athlete. It helped me so much as an adult. And I tend to, a lot of my girlfriends are former athletes as well, I would say. And I think that there's nothing better for preparing you for life, right? Than sports and feeling confident in how, in trying to win and doing all the
And
things
even
that sports
losing.
entail, and exactly, and losing and getting up again, right? And so what better metaphor for life than sports, where you're losing, you're winning, and you keep trying every day and you keep practicing and you're putting in the hours of practice in advance of the competition. So I think that, sports are a great analogy for what you're up against in business and in entrepreneurship, whatever form that takes for you. I also, though, it's funny because I often think, like, I was a little bit pressured as a kid.
Mm.
My mom was super invested in my tennis career. So, and I resented her for that a lot of the time. However, I don't know if I would be as competitive a person as an adult if I hadn't had that training.
Right.
Now I'm a parent of three, and I do see that, like, all of my kids have such vastly different personalities. And so they're all being raised the same way, all being raised in the same home. So much of it is nature, right? I mean, like, I can't get over how different my three children are from one another.
100%.
And it's
Yeah.
not something I did. It's who they are. It's who they came out as.
Yep.
And I already sort of can see who might be the CEO, who might be the public servant. I mean, it's kind of, pretty evident. So, and obviously that can change at any moment, but I do think that nature certainly plays a big role.
Yeah. Yeah, I have two young daughters, and they have very different personalities, but it was not learned. It's just who they are, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I guess, as parents, our biggest challenge is to help them blossom into who they're supposed to be, right? And not stop them from that, because our parenting style can't be one size fits all, because you realize that these kids are who they are and they have different needs from one another.
So if you don't mind going off on this tangent a little bit, because I don't think it's something that we've ever talked about on the show much, is the influence on kids and family. As an entrepreneur, obviously we're busy. I work a lot of hours. I admit that, and I'm loving working from home because it has changed that dynamic for me. But how has it impacted family life? How do you see it potentially influencing your children and what they do in the future? What's that kind of personal life impact of entrepreneurship?
Well, before I answer this question, I will ask you a question, which
Yeah,
is, why haven't you asked the men on your show this question?
I actually, you know what? I have asked one other person, but I can't remember who.
All right. Well, Andy, my challenge to you in the future is
But
to ask
I don't
everyone.
disagree with you. I
Yeah.
totally like, I hear what you're saying, and I would say that I'm not seeing this as a question that's specific to you as
No, but
a
the
mother.
reason I bring this up is because I think it's so critical, especially what you just said. Now that you're
Yeah,
working from home, right? And you're in this constant juggle of a kid wants your attention and you have to get on a call or whatever it is, right? We're all living that right now with COVID. And I think that we don't talk enough to men and women about this question.
agreed.
And so I think that you'd be doing a service to your listeners to actually ask all the men on your show this question, because
Mhm.
I think that, it now, thank God, people are talking about it more, right? Like, you're mentioning your kids on the show, and people are more comfortable doing that than they were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Yep,
I think there is no better role model for a child than to see a hardworking parent that is also a caring parent,
agreed.
right? So you can be both. And I share my career with my kids. At the dinner table, I'll say, what was the highlight of your day? And then they'll say, what's the highlight of your day? What was the low light? And I'll tell them, oh my gosh, guess who I got to meet today? Or, I got to meet Andy Halko. Like, I'll
Mhm.
tell them all about our interview, because I want them to feel invested
Yeah,
in what I'm doing and not to feel resentful. I think that when you hear about kids who are, like, making their parents feel guilty for working or for traveling or whatever it is, it's typically because those parents haven't shared anything with their kid. They're
right.
not saying to them, I'm going across the country to close a big deal and I'm so excited. Wish me luck, cheer me on, right? If you get that buy-in, then your
Mhm.
children's, I mean, they're not only supporting you, but they're learning something. And that's kind of what they're going to grow up to be in terms of following their dreams and reaching their goals. So I think it's phenomenal to share your career, to share your dreams, to share your losses and your wins with your kids. I'm a big
Great.
believer in that. And at the same time, I think that, you have to have some boundaries, right? You are at work and you can't always be bringing all your personal problems to work, right? None of us want to hear endlessly about someone's issue with their car payments or the problems with their mom or with their kids or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, I think there has to be some boundaries, but I do think that what we've seen in the last few years since COVID is wild, just what's happened. I mean, I've been on speaking engagements where there's a panelist with their bed in the background, right? Like, it is just it's a very different world now. And so I
Yeah,
think that we don't really know how it's going to shake out in terms of how it's permanently affecting the workplace. And I think it's tricky. We're all just figuring it out together.
agreed. Yeah, for me as a father of two young daughters, 6 and 8, and um, one, I want to see them take over the world. That's just as a father, and so and as an entrepreneur, I love to share the, idea of hardworking, innovation, solving problems, all these things that come with owning a business that I hope through osmosis and through discussion are influence them. But the work from home thing, like you said, for me, I always wanted to go in the office, and I have completely changed my tune. And I love being here at 3 o'clock when they come home from school, so I can have a quick conversation with them about their
Right.
day.
Yeah.
You know,
It's very different. It really is. It's wild. I mean, I used to have to travel a lot, and obviously a lot of that has been taken off the table because people are like, we can just have a Zoom. You don't need to fly here. It's wild. I mean, I'm raising money from my home office, and
mm,
it's just a very different world than we used to live in. I mean, we have an office at Park Place, and we haven't been there in a month just because the rates in Los Angeles have been so bad. But even when we had the office, we had a hybrid model where people go in 3 days a week, they work from home 2 days a week because the expectations of the workforce have also changed, right?
yeah,
You can no longer expect people to be in the office every single day because that's not what other companies are doing for them, and that's not what they want. To your point with your girls, it's funny because when my kids were much younger, I hosted a call-in radio show
mm,
where people would call me with their problems, and it was every Tuesday. And one of my favorite things was I would sort of put the problems people had in very rudimentary terms and terms that kids could understand. And I'd say, this was a problem someone called in with today. How would you solve it?
mm,
And it was so interesting hearing the three
mhm.
kids solve it based on their ages, right? So my 3-year-old son would say something, and then my 6-year-old daughter would say something, but it was a way to engage them and
Mm,
to make them feel like they had agency and they have the power to think about things critically and that someone's listening to them. And I think that, sharing your work challenges with your
yeah,
daughters will just strengthen them for sure. Yeah.
yeah. I almost want to, repeat that point because I think it is so powerful. Is sharing and engaging with your kids, family, whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be that you're an entrepreneur, but just generally, about your work life. And, I think that would probably give more people self satisfaction and help, like you said, their family understand what they're, doing and why and how it fits into the world. So
Yeah.
I love it. Um, let's turn just a little bit into culture because you started talking about the new expectation. Can you talk a little bit about the culture at the company and have you crafted it? Did it craft itself naturally? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, you know this because you talk to so many entrepreneurs, Andy. But I think that our culture at Park Place is ever evolving
Right.
because you have turnover. When you have a startup, you have turnover. You realize actually this is not the right position for this person, or I need this now. We're moving into technology, so we need a tech team. I mean, it's funny because I interviewed someone yesterday, and she was like, "What's the culture like?" And I'm like, well, it's funny you ask because what it's like today will be very different than what it's like a year from now. And
100%.
it's ever evolving, and every person that comes on board is going to have an impact on that culture. So I would say that, and especially because of the work from home situation, it's changed so dramatically, because now you can really hire from anywhere, right? You can get talent in Wisconsin, or you can find talent in Maine, or you can find talent in Texas. It just doesn't matter as much having people that are local. So that's changed the game a lot. One of the things that we do at Park Place is we have a daily morning meeting at 9:30 every day. And it's a chance for sort of also to see like who's feeling great, who seems a little pissed off today, who, you can kind of get the temperature of what's going on more than you would, I think, with a phone call. I really like the fact that I can see my team and see what's going on with people and see how people are reacting to each other. And it kind of helps me head off issues or problems that might exist. And then at the same time, I think it's really important for everyone to have that check-in point. And that's actually how we evolved into realizing we needed this tech platform, because our account executives don't have the benefit of having that daily meeting. So they might drop off their kids in the morning, or they might, come off their shift, and then they sit down to sell and they're just alone, right? And at the end of the day, it's really lonely to be a freelancer. And so because we have an independent sales force, we realize like it's our job to create a sense of community for them, to make them feel like they're some part of something important and part of a community that cares about them. So that if they sell their first deal, there's a bunch of people waiting to say, congratulations, we're so excited for you. And there's only so much you can do manually with that.
Right.
There's so much now we can do with this tech platform in terms of making it so that we can connect all of our thousands of account executives to one another, and they'll feel like they're really part of something important and special. And I think that's so critical. So, it's funny, we have like two cultures. We have our in-house full-time culture, and then we have our independent Salesforce culture.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Tell me a little bit about the building this tech platform. Do you have a technology background? Do you think that's impacted it? How have you gone about from like idea to reality? Can you share a little more on that?
Again, it's one of those things where I do not have a tech
Mm-hmm.
background. Okay. I once sold advertising for PC Computing Magazine for 2 years. So that's like the closest I have to a tech background. No, so I really don't
Stayed
have
at a Holiday Inn. Yeah.
So I again know where my gaps are and know how to
Mm-hmm.
hire around them. And so, the first thing I did when we decided to launch this tech platform and creating it, and, understanding that I like to move at the speed of light. When you're creating a tech platform, you have to breathe and realize it's going to take 12 to 18 months to get your vision to where it's supposed to be. So we're in the early stages of that. But the first thing I did was actually connect with someone who's been like a consultant to me, who is a CTO at another company full time. I'd worked with him on another project years ago, and then we were reintroduced by someone. And having him has been super valuable to us in terms of just thinking through exactly what our needs are. So I think there's so many people out there like that you can get as advisors to your company as you're creating something like this. I didn't want to make a mistake. There's such a huge difference between like CPOs, chief product officers, and CTOs, chief tech officers. I mean, there's so many subtleties, right? So like we now know that like we just, head of product is what we needed to hire. So a lot of those things are things that you don't know when you don't talk to people who are experts. And so I really had to bring in a team of experts to advise me on how to go about this and how to make it work. I know how to recruit the women. I know how to recruit the people of color, or the guys who've been victims of ageism. Like that's my sweet spot, right? I know how to recruit our sales team. But my sweet spot is not building technology. And so I just know what needs to be built. I know what features need to be in it. That's the part I can really contribute to. But I need an expert tech team around me.
And I'll say, having interviewed now, I think about 100 different founders, it's about 50-50, where there are 50% of the folks that come from a tech background, maybe even less, and the rest that really have to build that around them. But they've got a great idea. They've got that drive, the sales skill, because that's such an important piece. So, I mean, it's a common story for sure.
Well, yeah. And, more than 50% of entrepreneurs have never had any experience in the specific space they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people get spooked because they want to open, a window shades business, and they're like, but I don't know that much about window shades. But
Right.
if you know about people and you know about, so I think that it makes sense. Someone who's passionate about something, who works really hard and knows what it's going to take to build something, that's more important than the specific industry expertise.
So, as we're kind of wrapping up, I'd love to ask, this has been a great conversation, but what's the future of the company? What are you seeing in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So if, in 2 years from now, our tech platform will have been, off to the races for a long time. We will have boarded our, probably at that point, 10,000 account executives on the platform. Our engagement rates with them will certainly have gone up tremendously because we know how to keep people engaged and make them feel important and like they're part of something that's not just about sales, but also about, kind of like a giant account executive family.
Mhm.
Our merchants will not only love us because of our customer service, but they're going to love us because of our merchant portal.
Mhm.
Our churn rates right now are well below the industry average. The industry is about 30%, and we're 1.5%,
Wow.
based on our extraordinary customer service. So I feel like the merchant portal will just strengthen that even more for us. And we'll definitely, we've been fortunate. We have a ton of press, Park Place Payments. We get a lot of recognition with industry awards and press,
Mhm.
probably because we're women led, and that's definitely helped us. And we do things a little bit differently. We have a fun name. There's a lot of things going for our brand. But I do want people to know us as an opportunity for them to not only, well, there's two constituencies I really want us to be a household name with. One is these people that are looking for a side hustle or looking for a full-time thing
Mhm.
that gives them sort of, an unmatched financial opportunity in terms of earning potential. I want people to think of Park Place faster than they think of whatever the MLM is or whatever, else is out there. And then I would love for merchants to think of us first and to think, I want to be, with a company that's going to offer me great customer service, but also is focused on doing good. And that's Park Place.
It's amazing. So, before I ask my final question that I always ask everybody, where can people find you or where should they connect?
Well, they can find us at parkplacepayments.com, and I'm very active on social media. So they can follow me at Samantha Ettus on Instagram, or connect with me on LinkedIn, or on Twitter. So, yeah.
So, my final question that I ask everybody, if you could go back in time, before you started the business and have coffee with yourself, what advice would you give?
Oh, this is a really hard question for me. And the reason is not what you think. My whole motto is like, don't live life in the past lane, like no
I get it.
regrets. I've made tons of mistakes, but I really don't have regrets. I would say that, just keep going for it. And like, life is not linear. Maybe realize earlier on that whatever your circuitous path is, it's going to all work out in the end. And it's always a work in progress. So, I feel like I'm a work in progress. The person I was, the person that's having coffee with me, is so different than who I am today. And I'm sure that the person I'll be in 20 years is going to be also a lot more evolved. So, it's hard to say.
It's amazing. Well, Sam, I really appreciate the conversation. I think it was fantastic. A lot of great topics. So, thank you so much for joining the show.
Andy, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. And
Awesome.
Tony, I'm sorry you missed it, but Andy did an awesome job.
Yeah, it was good. We had a good little one-on-one conversation. I enjoyed it. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Sam.